movie sequence from my hotkeys and decided to rebind it into something else without even remembering, so yeah. But we're carrying on today. I don't have that pain in the back of my throat this time. Everything feels good. Of all the places nearest to the school, Kyla picks this one, and waiting for food to be served is as awkward as I'd imagined it would be. Not the bad sort, though. The pleasant kind. Surprisingly, Luke is an okay bloke when he tries. When he tries. So long as you're willing to look past the tactless remarks or when not exchanging Arabic quips. That's a word what I don't know. Clear he's making the effort for this to be as fun as possible for the 6-year-old by being chattier, even going as far as to laugh when Kylie's story calls for it. It's an interesting thing to hear from the man. More than once, I catch his frequent cheesed-off expression easing whenever he looks at the girl.
And your friend? Did you make up with her?
Yep! She said she just saw something she didn't like. She didn't accept the jellies, though. She told me to give it to you instead. She knows you like the red ones, too.
Very well. Hand it to me later. I'll bring some of them home. I think your Tia would love to have some.
What a terrible liar. He says he dislikes the idea of having children of his own, but it's easy to see some part of him genuinely wants them. What's stopping him? Once Kylie wanders to the nearby bookshelves after having lost interest in conversation, however, we both revert back to the silence. On our own, we have little to talk about aside from a few questions about the other here and there. At one point, it does veer on local politics and history. He's surprisingly versed with it that he's surprisingly well versed enough with it that he can hold a decent conversation without throwing a jibe. Nothing too personal is ever mentioned so far, though. It's too early for those, and besides, I don't like him enough to speak of every minute detail of my life. Better keep it strictly between the silence and the casual repartee. The whole thing already looks and feels wrong on so many levels. I'm quite sure he feels the same. So when another bout of silence hits us and becomes too much, I've taken to finding something else to occupy myself. Toying with my mobile, turning it from hand to hand while we wait for our respective meals. But it'll be a complete lie if I say I'm not waiting for some intervention. Something to pull me away from this place. Someone. Ashton's probably at Salem well by now, working on whatever business he has there. Maybe if I make up an excuse and I leave now, I can still catch him.
Cut that out, it's distracting.
My hand stills, holding the gadget awkwardly between us, arrested mid-pass by his bored tone. He's been quiet for a long minute now after complaining about how appalling the tea they're serving here is. Before that, he has whined about how uncomfortable his chair is and tasteless the decorations they have here. Previous to that, he has griped about how dull the place is compared to the one he frequents on the upper class side of the city. Well, I'm sorry for being a bunch of peasants, Your Majesty. Figures he'll lose patience soon, having already grumbled about almost everything his eyes can reach. It's just unfortunate he's turned to me now.
Why don't you just look somewhere else?
I can't. If I turn elsewhere, I might end up looking at the bobfuck right behind us.
Bobfuck? Do I even want to ask?
I don't want to hear it. It's coming out of his mouth. It can only either be rude or offensive. Regardless, he continues.
Everything looks good. But have you seen the face? True horror.
What is wrong with you? You know, I frown about this in practice, but that mouth needs to be washed out with a particularly potent soap. Preferably by your own mum.
A shame she isn't here,
For whatever reason, that puts an end to the talk right away. He returns to watching his godchild, who has found a particularly interesting picture book and is now poring over it while I turn back to my mobile. Still no message. Would it kill him to at least send a message, check if we were home? Meanwhile, Luke's silence lasts all but 10 seconds.
What is it with the damn mobile? Are you on a curfew?
He's got the immature act down pat. I'll give him that. Seriously, how old is this guy? He has somehow been deprived of affection during childhood.
And what is it to you? I don't think it's any of your business what I do with it.
It is my business, all right? 1, I'm the one paying here. 2, I'm being forced to eat dinner in a place this stuffed and noisy. Lastly, it's been 10 minutes, the food isn't here, and I'm hungry. What you're doing with the mobile is annoying and distracting, when the least you could do is keep things entertaining while I suffer.
That's your problem? Shouldn't you be more worried about how this entire affair looks to other people?
Oh, I didn't realize this was one. You move fast, Daisy. You could have informed me first, you know.
Sleaze!
Had I known, I would have taken you someplace nicer. Certainly the kind with better food and plenty of good wine.
Why did I ever think this was a good idea?
I don't know, I did.
Did it ever occur to you how inappropriate this might look to everyone?
Why should I care? It's only inappropriate if you make it out to be. Relax, I won't do anything to make your boyfriend angry. He doesn't even need to know we dined out. It'll be our dirty little secret.
He's not my boyfriend!
Oh, but you wish he was. The words come out with more force than I had intended. By the time I realise my slip-up, his lips are already spread in a sneer. Heat slowly crawls up my
Oh,
face.
so there is someone. You're so easy to read.
Briefly, his eyes search my face. I have no idea what he sees, nor do I care to know. But in the next second, he barks out a laugh, displaying his amusement without reserve to anyone within earshot. In that moment, I know I've flipped a switch in him somewhere, and I've lost my chance to deny his assumptions. Do I even want to? Isn't that the reason why I've been so focused on my mobile, waiting for another message from him? For a reason to dump this awkward meeting to go after him?
Look how mottled you are.
He's got you.
Now the nickname makes more sense. Shy Miss Pink and her cute little crush. The color suits you, by the way. It matches the hair.
It's not a crush!
Oh,
Classic
it is.
denial. But in reality, you want him to be yours, and your every move is made to make him notice you. In fact, you don't want him to see you with another man in a non-professional capacity, because he might misinterpret it.
The same thing goes for you, doesn't it? Bloody, yours is even worse. What about your wife? Aren't you concerned she might misinterpret this?
Daisy, just because we tied the knot doesn't mean we have to be joined at the hip at every single opportunity.
Don't be ridiculous. Why else would you marry her if you don't want to be with her for the rest of your lives?
Because, Daisy, she also has other things she can do with her life and friends to spend time with.
It's a good relationship motto to live by. You don't have to be joined at the hip every single fucking second.
Granted, I don't like some of them, and I have a few of my own she utterly dislikes. But wifey doesn't have to know my every move. Nor do I hers. Do you know how boring that would be? To be with the same person for all hours of the day, losing sleep over the mere fact they're not with you? Or putting everything you have aside to please them? To have your whole world revolve around one person?
Aren't you just mistaking that for something else? Unlike you, there are other people here who don't share the same jaded outlook you have. Don't lump everyone together just because it didn't work out for you.
I don't think it's a jaded outlook at all.
And you, my dear, are unexpectedly naive.
What's so naive about it? If you love each other, wouldn't you want to always see them, be with them, to have them focus solely on you? Maybe you haven't been loved enough.
Oh, it's that kind of thing for you, isn't it? The love is eternal, love is a strong emotion shite. A starry-eyed girl pining for her dashing Prince Charming.
She's unconsciously knowing, if I go back to it, maybe you haven't been loved enough. This whole small block here, she has unknowingly given every single thing about her character away. Oh, maybe you weren't loved enough. because I wasn't loved by my parents enough. They actually saw their students more of children than they saw of me. I want to always be with Ashton non-stop, but you don't seem to understand that. Why would you marry someone if you didn't want to spend every waking minute with them? She's literally given away her entire life story in 3 sentences.
What's next? Romantic confessions of love? A grand wedding on the beach? Dozens of spawns running around in some picturesque home in the suburbs?
Sorry about the crinkles. Throat sweets.
How quaint. Are you also expecting it's going to be sunshine and rainbows after? A happily ever after? Please.
What she's hoping for.
What? I never once said. And is all of that such a bad thing to hope for?
Woman, I've been married for 7 years, and I'm telling you, it's far from what you have in your pretty red head. Tell me, how long has this song and dance been going for you and your man? Maybe I am mistaken.
Averting my eyes from him is all I managed to do. What does his mere 7 years have compared to the 17 I've had with Ash, considering in 7 years they've got married, confessed their love for each other. In your 17 years, neither of you has made a move, and Ash is in love with Isabella. It's laughable he thinks those two things are even comparable. Ash and I may never have moved past the boundaries of friendship, like what I'm hoping for years. The Chinglish in this is getting even more extreme. But what we have isn't something anyone can scoff at. I've always been on his side during everything with him. I know him better than anyone. No matter what this man, this complete stranger says, I know there will always be a place for me beside him. And yet...
Come on, Daisy, that shouldn't be too hard. 3, 5, 8, 10, 20...
His words easily seep into my heart like sharp daggers, gradually picking apart everything I've ever been sure of. Despite myself, the doubts resurface and my defenses crumble right in front of my eyes. No wonder he sees right through me, and as expected, he ridicules it. Laughs. Restrained, low and rumbling, a sharp sound... I'm turning into Sean Connery. A sharp sound striking the air around us amidst the murmur of people and the soft notes of the music playing over our heads. His shoulders shake, and with his mirth, when his mirth becomes too much even for him, he reaches up a hand and passes it over his face as if to hold his glee close to him.
Lordy bullocks, this is just brilliant. Oh, mother, why do I always keep running into these things? This day couldn't get any better. I think I'm gonna need a stiff drink after this.
Oh, wait. This is the 27th. When did he meet Marianne? Because that line is clearly referencing Marianne. Oh. "23rd? 22nd? Oh, God knows. He dissolves into another peal of laughter, but when it subsides, what he has for me are more words. Scathing, each of them. The urge to run from here has never been this strong.
Is everything you said how you plan to act, if that man of yours ever ends up with you? Cling to him? Put him on a bloody pedestal? Let him become the center of your universe? Although with how long this seems to be going on, I think you've already done so. Marriage will just be icing on the top. Like some sort of reward for you, isn't it? For being a good, patient, loyal little girl all this time, never looking at another man. He must have been having a grand time with someone pining over him this long. I'm a little envious, to be honest. Maybe also a little surprised he hasn't suffocated from all your attention yet.
Laugh all about it if you want. It's not like you'll ever understand.
Luke falls silent. The ridicule in him has gone in an instant, and his eyes meet mine, sharp and imposing. A challenge, but I hold it against him with the same intensity. Because if there's something I won't let his opinion trample on, it's this. What does he know? However, he's the first to look away, focusing his eyes back on where Kylie is, and for a moment, I believe I've won. Until he draws in a breath and turns back to me. The words he drops next, though hushed, hang heavy in the distance between us.
You're right. I won't. But I do know not to mistake love for obsession, woman. They are not the same thing.
It rattles. Out of everything he's said tonight, this is the one thing that twinges in my heart. Maybe it's the manner he delivers it, the lack of conceit in his posture, or an underlying insult in the tone he takes. The remark is not meant to cut, merely to express a simple truth. This time, it's him who holds gaze against mine. Another unspoken challenge, and as I realise that, if this happened minutes before, I'd already have an equally searing retort at the tip of my tongue. There's none. The anger is there, ringing at my insides. I thought I was whinging for a second then, ringing at my insides, prodding at the uncertainties I've long kept. It isn't enough. We have the long years we've been together, we have the memories whenever he needs me until other people came in between us. I've always been the one there. That dedication and loyalty should mean something, shouldn't it? I've always been sure of it, and that one day he'll see it for what it is. In spite of that, in this minute, under this man's scrutiny, my own heart wavers. Now I'm struggling to find the words. I don't need to answer that. However, those are for me to ponder on. This arse doesn't need to hear them, and neither is he entitled to them just because he's dished out some profound sounding life wisdom no one asked for. So I look away, hoping my silence would be enough of an answer for him. And it is, for a moment. Up until warm, furious tears prickle behind my eyes, stinging, begging for a release, along with every frustration this dumb talk has built up in me. All because of this man. I hate him. I hate the fact that he has to be the one to see me in this sorry state. I'm already expecting another barb from him when his expression shifts. Except he panics. In the span of 3 seconds, his expression changes from indifferent to concerned. To utter panic. Probably would have been very funny if I weren't so irked by the sight of his glycit, of this glycit bastard. What the fuck is a glycit? I'm gonna have to search this word up, so just give us a second. Glycit. The Scottish term for stupid, foolish, or thoughtless. For the sight of this stupid bastard.
Hey, are you crying? Are you going to cry? Stop that right now, woman, or I'll...
Oh, he's getting flushed.
Will you shut up?
He clams up almost before I could finish. Whether it's due to the sudden force of my voice, or how I look, I pretend not to think of it. He seems like a deer caught in the headlights, with the way he's making himself smaller in his seat. But I'm still pissed. I'm tired, and if I can't punch him, I can at least scream at him.
You're an annoying bag of dick, you know that? If I hear another word from you, I'm sewing that bloody mouth shut myself!
It does do the trick. Not to the effect I'd hoped, but the moment I snapped at him, the stinging at the back of my eyes melts away and a strange calm overcomes me. Fragile thing when found in the middle of a busy coffee shop. Nevertheless, it's appreciated considering it doesn't last, immediately broken by the very person that put me in this state with a few awkward pats to my shoulder. Done twice, thrice, and another. Until my patient runs out again and I'm pulling out the book from my bag, raising it threatening over his head. It'll surely dent his skull if I slam it down at this height. Part of me wants to see that, but I restrain myself. He has the good sense to recoil though. Shortly, he shrinks back into his seat and waves his hand in front of him in a gesture of surrender.
Watch that book, woman. I already warned you about your little threats. You don't want to see my brand of angry.
Yeah, look at that brand of angry, so threatening.
Then keep your hands to yourself!
All right, that's it. People these days, I swear you treat them nicely, and this is where it gets me.
You're the last person I'd ever want to comfort me, even if we're the only two remaining people on Earth. Don't flatter yourself.
Them some strong words.
Okay, have it your way, Daisy.
And stop calling me Daisy! I have a name, you know!
He mutters something inaudible under his breath, although afterwards he doesn't say anything further. For the next minute, he simply contents himself with making a mess out of the paper napkins, folding them into clean shapes without any clear intent, before crumpling them in his hand when he loses interest and dumping them in a small pile in front of him. The waiter serves our meal soon enough, and Kylie makes her way back to our table. Did I just see a shadow form? Or is it just that light dimming? Before I can take a single bite, he mutters something. The word spoken in the same tone he used since morning, all under his breath whenever the honest part of him would show. Despite my rather confusing opinion on the man, I stop short of shoving food in my mouth to look at him. His eyes are on his food as he speaks, busying himself with cutting a portion of the meat on his plate. What comes out of him only rings true against my ears above the din of the coffee house.
For what it's worth, Rebecca, I didn't ever think that's all there is to you. Why else would I leave my own goddaughter in your care if you're just some lovesick woman?
He spears a piece of his food, pops it into his mouth, and that's it. One whole day with this man and I still can't figure what his deal is. For what it's worth as well, I don't think he's entirely a bad guy. The rest of our meal slips by in the silence afterwards. Aside from Kylie's occasional chatter, the whole dinner goes by without a word exchanged between the two of us. Somehow, we managed to make it through the whole thing without triggering another tension-riddled conversation. A good thing, perhaps. One, because Kylie's sitting right in front of us, and two, I probably won't be able to hold a proper conversation with my mind heavy with thoughts. We depart from the coffee house just as the evening crowd starts to thin out. The same wordless silence fills our short walk back to the school, except for when Luke gestures at a nearby flower shop and enters it without waiting for Kylie and I. He emerges minutes after carrying a bouquet of daffodils, with the same softened expression back on his face. Unlike the previous ones, he tucks this one away almost as soon as he looks up at us, in a moment he's not willing to share. To my confusion, he merely answers with a shrug and continues walking.
For someone important.
I accept it for what it is, if only because he doesn't owe me an explanation. It does leave more questions about him, each one as baffling as the previous ones. There was the last word spoken this evening before we head on our own ways. Up until I arrive at home, I still can't understand him. Here, however, a whole different set of questions await me. And much like everything today, it comes with the littlest of things. A lone note greets me upon reaching my unit's door, its edge flutter lightly against the faint warm breeze passing through the small complex. My hands stop short of twisting the knob as I stare at it, though I don't make any moves to take it. Ashton's neat script lines its surface. Dropped by earlier, you weren't around, any ideas where Scaredy Cat is? I couldn't contact her, Inspector Abigail has a few questions, LPD stuff, something about her dead co-workers. Anyway, let me know how the two of you have been doing. I'll see you later. Ash, winky face. Ashton. The message you left, short and straight to the point, but not without the underlying hint of friendship. He's looking for Isabella, apparently. Something about an LPD... Okay, us. Any other day, the former part of this message will likely product the piercing envy I've been holding, while the latter will probably send my heart aflutter. Little things from him that I want to mean something more. Yet, this time, only guilt fills me and my eyes briefly shift towards Isabella's empty unit. Luke's words repeat inside my head as I do so.
For what it's worth, Rebecca, I didn't ever think that's all there is to you. Why else would I leave my own goddaughter in your care if you're just some lovesick woman?
Have I always been like this?
He's really getting underneath her skin. This selfish, In truth, I've intended to call Ash after that dinner. If I didn't catch him here, invite him to that party like I planned. There's time and he's still probably awake around this hour. My hands won't move. And perhaps it's for the better. Until I've had time to think this through, it'll be best if I distance myself from those I've been clinging too tightly to. Find a different perspective and see things for what they are. With a soft sigh, I reach for the note and crumple it under my hand. The knob twists open with much ease when I enter this time. Maybe after some introspection, it'll be easier. But tomorrow I have that woman and that mansion to worry about. Interesting. I wonder, if we didn't go out for the dinner with Luke, whether she would have invited Ashton or not. It seems to be the meeting with Luke that has completely soured her against the idea of asking Ashton. Interesting. The night wears on without further incident, despite the great number of thoughts swimming inside my head. For morning, they're only a hush, a strange sort of stillness unlike the ones greeting me every morn. This one's uneasy, tight with anticipation, like a string stretched thin, merely waiting for the proper time to snap. Granted, it doesn't make my day any less pleasant, but the edge is there. And, as expected, the second I step out of my flat, it comes apart, broken by the voices of two squabbling adults echoing from the floor below. The quiet was nice, while it lasted. Shame.
What the hell were you thinking?
Oh, it's Ashton and Isabella.
I wasn't. Ow! Could you let go?
Not a few seconds later, they both ascend the stairs, with Ashton pulling Isabella by her wrist. She struggles, as she should, but his hold on her remains firm. Freeing herself means having to draw blood, and as she attempts to pry his hands off her with her other one, or using unnecessary force to push herself away. Neither of which is better than the other. One could potentially end in an accident, while the other means having to hurt him physically. She has the good sense to realise that, however. Realise that at least. However, it doesn't take the desperate edge in her voice when she answers Ashton's temper with her own. So on they go, none the wiser to my presence.
Do you have any idea how much trouble you could get in?
That's why I'm asking you for help.
Is this what you've been doing these past 3 days? Because this doesn't make your case convincing, Isabella.
Rose died, Ash.
I know. Every single person in Luxburg knows. It's on the damn news. But that doesn't mean...
People are missing. Some of those are my friends. And BRC's just covering it all up.
You can't just barge into my office and expect me to do anything about it, right off the bat. This isn't a children's game, Isabella. We have procedures. We have to follow protocol. There's red tape all over this case for a reason. We sure as hell don't investigate things just because some stupid letter spooked us.
Ash, you have to believe me this time. If we don't do anything right now, more people will...
It's been a whole week. This stupid letter prank is getting old real fast. I'm sick of it.
This is a different Ash.
It was funny the first time, not so much now.
You're the only one that can help me with this, Ash. Even Rebecca won't.
All right, you two are awfully loud. What's going on here?
Both of their heads snap up almost in unison. A displeased frown is on each of their faces, but this is a necessary interruption. What can they do? People still in their units have already taken interest in the commotion, with some taking a peek behind their curtains, while others are bold enough to creak open their doors, if only slightly. If they don't keep it down, pretty soon our landlady will show up. Getting a reprimand from her is the last thing I want to happen, first thing on a Friday morning, even if this is hardly my fault.
Well, if you want to continue this, you two better do it elsewhere. You're disturbing other people.
Don't worry, we're done here.
No, we aren't. Becca, I looked it up. I called them. I visited some of them and...
Which you shouldn't have done in the first place. Isabella, you're going to create more problems for us with what you're doing. A team has already been assigned to it. Leave it to us.
Your precious team is looking at it the wrong way. Becca, it's not just Rose. There are others.
Yeah, there are other BRC members who have died. Last bit strikes a chord, prods strongly at a memory. That vicious smile already etched deep inside my mind. The image appears clear, even though at the mere mention of it, I stumble on my own question.
What do you mean?
The letter, Rebecca! It's not...
It's nothing. If there's really something going on because of that dumb letter, none of us would be standing here. We've all read it, haven't we? But Rebecca's alive, Zach's alive, I'm alive. So for the last time, this isn't a curse. There's a murderer on the loose, and your coworkers happen to be the victims. Give it a rest, Isabella. It's too early for this shit.
Don't you think that's too much for a coincidence?
Not so much. Most serial killers follow a pattern. I'll tell you about it some other time. And anyway, coincidence or not, the point is, civilians like you aren't supposed to get involved. You're putting yourself in danger.
I wasn't chasing after.
Will the both of you slow down and stop arguing for a minute? What's this about your coworkers, Belle?
Becca, please don't tell me now you believe this shit.
I've seen it. It takes over children and turns them into weird little demons. Sure, in a heartbeat, I'll agree with Ashton. That's how it's always been, besides having a very good point. Really, they are the very same ones he'll make every time I ask too many questions. But the fact of the matter is, what he wants to hear from me right now is far from what I've been seeing, sensing these past few days. Oh, it doesn't matter what Isabella or I believe on our own. Something odd has been happening around me, and that letter she picked up is the heart of this. But however I respond to the question in their faces, only one of them will be pleased with this. I might have seen her. Best to be honest. Oh, Ashton's gone down a bit. Ashton in particular won't be happy to hear it. Imagining the look on his face doesn't take too much effort. His entire posture shifts to the moment my reluctance shows, shoulders tensing, brows furrowing, eyes gaining a sharp edge. He's already bracing himself for the disappointment. And it will be a disappointment. Not in a million years did I believe I'll ever be saying this either.
I might have seen her. The woman Belle's been telling us about. The one she said she saw in the attic.
Both of them stare at me like I've grown an extra head, and for a few moments Ashton looks as if he's about to have a fit. Pause treads at his heels. After a silence thick enough, one can almost hear a pin drop.
You're kidding, right?
Do I look like I'm joking?
I'm not joking.
Really, Becca? Not funny.
Ash, I'm not lying. Why would I lie about this? It's been this way since the film fest. The past few days have been really odd since we read that letter.
Or maybe you're all just feeling under the weather.
Yeah, 'cause it's just a coincidence, Ashton.
I'm not sick. Don't you think I'd know that by now?
Becca, you're starting to sound like Scaredy Cat. Give me a break.
Why don't you?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, you two.
Isabella's voice cut sharply through the conversation, abruptly putting to an end to the brewing argument.
It's all my fault. This is all my fault. I was only hoping I could fix this before any of you. I'm sorry for dragging you all into this.
She breathed in deep, steadying, and in that moment something falls behind her eyes as she looks away.
I'll fix this. I promise.
Quiet resolve. The same one I saw in her that night from 3 days ago. But this time it burns brighter. Even Ashton wavers at its sight. When she looks at him straight in the eyes, gaze unflinching, gradually his grip on her wrist loosens.
Belle, there's nothing to fix. The problem is...
Just this once, Ash.
Her voice, though small and lacking any force, stops him. Along with it, every sound, every noise dies around us, a hush descending as if the world is waiting for her words.
You don't have to come with me. But if I don't do anything, I am going to regret it.
He lays a hand atop his. Gentle. Pleading. Almost intimate if one does not consider the circumstances we found ourselves in.
Please.
Ashton will never tell a soul, will never admit to even himself, but in that short second, that breaks his own resolve breaks. The moment the hard edge in his eyes softens and he relinquishes his hold on her, letting his hand fall limply to his side, wordlessly Isabella steps back and runs off, leaving only muttered thanks and a small lackluster smile. Only after the last of her footsteps fade away does Ashton move, breaking the silence with one of his sharp exhales before reaching up to pinch the bridge of his nose in a gesture of frustration and surrender.
Did you really have to tell her that?
What do you want to hear from me then? That everything's fine?
No, I want all of you to stop putting these ideas in her head. None of it is helping.
That music change is, a bit intense.
Never mind. Don't worry about her. I'll bring her back here.
He's already poised to leave when my own instinct takes over. I reach for him, gripping at his elbow. The same unyielding grip, the action prompted by voices whispering in the back of my mind. He's already made it clear he's not going to believe me, but he deserves a word of caution. Who knows where all of this will take us? How all of this will end? He shouldn't be caught off guard, beliefs notwithstanding.
Ash, I know you don't believe in those things she's saying. And you know me. I'm less inclined to believe in those things as you do. But I've seen something. There's something strange going on here. You don't have to buy it. If you don't want to listen to me, fine. But please, try to hear her out. It's bad enough that Isabella goes off like this without telling anyone. I'm just worried something might happen to her if she keeps at it. Talk to her, okay?
As if she trusts me enough for that.
Doesn't the fact that she approached you first about this, instead of me, already say a lot?
Different kind of trust, granted implicitly and never spoken, sometimes too big, too fragile to last. He falls silent for a long moment as he turns it over in his mind. In the end, all he manages to offer is a small nod before he departs and a promise to, at least, listen to her, without the teasing or the jibes. A favour for me, the least he could do for her. This is as much as I can do for him, as well until I've understood what's going on, what's happening myself. Tonight, hopefully, where this all started will provide the answers I'm looking for. Except the whole thing's off to a bad start, and all of a sudden whatever Isabella claims dwelling in this mansion becomes the least of my concerns. Of all the cabbies in Luxbourne, I have to chance upon the superstitious one. Still not as bad as finding out your car starter refuses to crank on when it was still working this morning, yes, but it's equally as frustrating when you're forced to walk the rest of the way. All because the driver got spooked. Isabella and him will get along so well. I do get his reason, after all. I've had my fair taste of the bizarre lately, all of which might have been brought upon by that letter Isabella found here. But you'd think he'd at least be charitable enough to take me a little closer to the house itself, not at a distance 15 minutes away from it by foot. Good thing I'm not wearing anything too formal or constricting. Otherwise, that short walk would have lightly put me into a bad mood. Long before I've had to suffer in a room full of strangers tonight. Although this soon provides to be a problem the second the driveway comes into view and I near the entrance. Severely underdressed is a total understatement to describe how I look. Cars worth more money than my own apartment and childhood home combined line the mansion's front yard. Men and women decked out in the best also flock near the entrance. Most eager for the festivities to start, while some are simply idling about, enjoying the warm afternoon sun before it sets. Once the woman standing in front of the porch speaks, their undivided attention immediately shifts to her. Presumably Miss Wright, from the confident manner she holds herself among the present company. This, despite her being despite keeping a far simpler appearance than the rest of her own guests, or not having her husband beside her. A trait most worthy of utmost admiration at best. At worst, she's the envy of every woman, the subject of every gossip in Luxbourne.
Welcome everyone.
My name is Hana. As Mum said, we could have been good friends. I can't even picture myself mingling with the kind of guests she has. Though I admit she does seem familiar now that I've seen her this close. Memories of sitting in a vanity not mine, being dressed in clothes too fancy for my tastes. They flit briefly in my mind until the cheerful tone rises above the buzz of the enraptured audience again.
Please, make yourselves at home.
I wish I can share her enthusiasm, really. But being surrounded by all this extravagance, for lack of a better term, merely makes me dread how the rest of the night might go. I shouldn't have let Luke's words affect me like that. I should have just gone ahead and asked Ashton like I planned. So Ashton's not even here? No, Ashton does turn up. Because I remember in Hannah's story, the Asian-looking boy. Though Ashton still turns up anyway. If he were here, then I won't have to.
Be careful with Shirley, alright?
Yeah, there he is. The rest of that thought dies in my mind at once. A moment of astonishment overcomes me, before confusion sets in seconds later. It takes another for my body to catch up. Once it does, when I finally turn to see it for myself, it's his familiar mop of hair that catches my eyes first. And there he is, almost an arm's reach if it isn't for the guest standing between us. Ashton Frey standing in the Ermengarde Mansion's driveway with an air too lackadaisical for someone who absolutely abhors parties of any form. Or has he business here? As far as I know, the picture it forms is too bizarre for me, that my mouth speaks out ahead of my coherent thoughts.
Ashton?
He swivels on his heel with an equally puzzled face. An odd expression flashes momentarily across it once he sees me, though he blinks it away before I can figure out what it is exactly.
Becca, what are you doing here?
I was invited.
Really? I had no idea you were friends with the host.
Well, it's my parents, actually. But that's beside the point. What are you doing here? You hate parties.
I still do. I'm just here on behalf of a friend.
That in itself is weird coming from him. It doesn't help that he isn't even making an effort to spare a glance my way when he answers. Instead, they're focused at some point in the crowd. His gaze darting between people walking past us until a small frown forms on his face.
That's rare. Do you have someone with you then?
Nope, just me. I won't be staying long.
Well, if that's the case, maybe you and I can...
Chief?
Ashton, what's...
Unexpectedly, he places a hand on my shoulder, stopping me mid-sentence. He still has the distracted look on him, except this time his eyes are sharper, as if he has found what or who he's been searching for among the throng of partygoers earlier.
Sorry, Becca. I need to... There's something I need to check for a bit. I'll talk to you later. Do you have a ride home?
No, I had to take a cab here. My car wouldn't start this afternoon. But what about...
I told you to get that old thing checked before, didn't I? You can head back with me after this. Anyway, I gotta go. See ya.
I mean, the smile he hastily throws at me, he hastily throws my way with a frown of my own. What does he mean by that? But before I can ask, already he has turned his back from me and is walking away without a single explanation whatsoever. In some desperate effort, I tried to catch up to him, if only to know what warranted this sudden departure and his odd warning at the end.
Hey, be careful! About what exactly?
Only for my attempts to be interrupted by a muffled ringing from my pockets. Mum's cheerful voice greets me as soon as I answer.
Yes, I'm at the party already, Mom. Yes, I'll say hi to her if I can.
The conversation itself doesn't last long. Just a simple hello, a reminder to enjoy the party and to send their regards to an old student. When the call ends and I get to look up, Ashton's already nowhere in sight. With a sigh and admittedly a little disappointment, I took my mobile back into my pocket and head inside. Even with familiar company, however coincidental this meeting is, this is somehow shaping up to be a terrible evening. The party hits full swing an hour later, with the host's opening remarks given, still no sign of her husband, the poor woman, and the guests promptly fed. The band shifts the melody to a livelier tune. Soon, laughter and the rhythmic tapping of shoes fill the room, all in accordance to the lifting strains of the music. It seems fun, I admit. Fascinating. At certain moments, the flurry of dancers making the music their own, almost with no care in the world. If I weren't so indisposed, I'd have joined the crowd for a song or two. There isn't a lack of invitations anyway, plenty of them in fact, with some asking for more than just once. It's my own stubborn refusal that prevents me from joining them, and I can. A single nod is all it'll take, and the evening would be far enjoyable for me. With my pride and my own silly hopes, the thought of being seen with one of them by him curbs that, as much as I hate to admit it. Because doing so also means the outright acknowledgement the douche's claims. That he has to be the one to tell me that he has to be the one that tell me that still sends my blood boiling. Jesus Christ. Ugh. I'd have preferred someone more agreeable, less of an arse. The hard truth to swallow, especially when the very person at the centre of it makes denial difficult. Can't even spare me a minute of his attention or a single glance at me the whole evening. Hell, Zachary might have even spoken more words to me. The big guy's busy covering the event to boot. But at least he manages to slip in a conversation or two between takes, or a small wave of his hand when he passes by. What's Ashton's excuse? He's been flitting in and out of sight the whole time. One moment he's hanging around with a small group, and another he's hovering around the string band. Just a second ago he was wolfing down some deviled eggs by the buffet table, a glass of wine in hand. The next thing I know, he's gone. If I didn't know any better, I'd say he doesn't want to be with any of his friends. Is it because his boss is here? What's the big deal about that? It's never bothered him before.
I swear, the next person who asks, I'm dancing the night away with. Ashton can go fuck himself.
You would catch his eye a lot better if you wore nicer clothes, don't you think?
Oh, Hannah, darling. Her voice almost makes me jump, too focused on the gobshite wandering about the ballroom and with my own annoyance to notice. She's heard any of the profanities I've mumbled, or she's taken notice of my discomfiture. She makes no comment on it, merely greeting me with a smile as I turn my attention to her. Miss Hannah Wright gives off a whole different air when she's not speaking to an audience. Homely, a bit too friendly for my liking. But I guess that comes from being raised in such an environment and having to deal with pompous, snooty people. Though I suppose nothing has really changed from years ago. I remember her carrying herself in the same manner during that one and only visit. Does she remember any of it? I won't be surprised if she doesn't. It's taken me a while myself. She probably met a lot of people like little Becky throughout the years. Might have already forgotten about me or my parents. People like her thrive on connections after all. Nevertheless, I return a smile, awkward and stiff as it may be.
Didn't realize the housewarming was going to be this fancy. I would have.
Oh, you're fine, dearie. It's only really the parvenus, those who climb, that come to these parties all dolled up. Quite the black-haired beauty, isn't he?
It takes me a while to realise who she's talking about, until Ashram walks by again, in closer proximity than any of the other times he's done so far this evening. Still without a look of acknowledgement our way, though, even if Miss Wright speaks loud enough to catch the attention of anyone in earshot.
Ash?
You know, you really shouldn't have turned down those offers. If I wasn't married, I'd happily go dancing with those young men. But you said a name. Ash. That's the exquisite lad you've been looking at all this time. I don't know him, and I'm the one hosting this party. That must mean you know each other. Is he your boyfriend then? Because that would explain those rejections.
This isn't the first time someone has made that assumption. Almost every student I've had in the past did. My co-workers, more often than not, assume he is. A few of my neighbours also think we're an item. Not that Ashton has ever reacted to those. He's been quite indifferent about it, in fact. Still, the heat of a blush creeps up on my cheeks, a denial ready despite wanting it to happen so badly myself.
No, that's ridiculous. He isn't my boyfriend.
Such a violent reaction. A simple no would have sufficed. Many here would be happy to hear it.
And I haven't been looking at him.
Oh, but you have, Rebecca. I do my best to summon a straight face, but before her good cheer, it easily falters.
That's right. You've been staring. Quite heatedly, in fact. Although I'm not sure if you look like you want to kiss him or kill him.
It's more the latter currently.
Just don't go murdering him on my property.
Murdering?
I don't want to walk into a room and suddenly find a body there.
It's infectious in a way. No sooner I find myself enjoying our chat more than I'd imagined myself to. Ugh. That's better. Although her attention briefly wavers at one point, she remains a good companion. Even more, once I've mentioned who my parents are, her face quickly lights up when fondness graces her face, despite the meeting from several years ago being a short one. But, of course, there are some things we can't really avoid talking about. After all, it is one of the few things I remember her asking me the moment she spotted little Becky in the room. You have a boyfriend? In retrospect, it's an odd thing to talk about as children, when there are loads we could have started with.
Yes, oh, I remember you! You were the cutest little thing with glasses! And when we met, you were having boy troubles with this lad called something with an A.
Ashton. I believe I still have the clothes she gave me, chosen, all so I could impress him. And even back then, Ashton has always been denser than a rock. And that one attempt to get him to notice backfired spectacularly. Sure, he's keen, he's a detective for heaven's sake, but feelings, more often than not, escape him.
What was it again? Aaron, Alan, Adele, Albert, Alexander,
Middle name.
Andrew?
He said my middle name. He's obviously referring to me. Which makes this whole talk all the more embarrassing. And the more names she lists off, the more my discomfort grows until my smile turns into a grimace. What will she think of me? Here she is, married to a man she probably loves at that, while I'm stuck in the same place, yearning for the same person.
Ashton! Ash! That man is that boy! The same one.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness me, after all these years! I can see why, though. He's quite dashing.
You don't really need to announce it to everyone within earshot, you know? Keep it down.
I'm so sorry, but it really is cute.
She says that, but for a short moment, a hint of pity flickers in her eyes. I take that as a chance to change the subject before anything can be said over the matter. I haven't even figured out how I should feel about the things Luke told me. Now I'm getting dragged into a smaller discussion.
So, this is a nice party, Miss Wright.
Though, to be frank, I doubt she'll be so willing to pass this up. The topic has already captured her attention.
Please, Anna's fine. We're friends of a sort, aren't we? We must be friends, seeing as I know about your little infatuation, Becky. Don't you worry, dearie. You'll have your happy ending yet.
I'm not too concerned about that, am I? That's not what I'm looking for.
Oh, but it is.
Oh? And what makes you think that? Doesn't everybody want their happy ending?
The idea of happy endings sounds like they're just for fairy tales. And they are, sorta. I don't think you can just sit around, trapped in some tower and hope for the best. If you love them, you have to fight for it, right?
You've never fought for this relationship once, Becca.
You're not just going to sit there and hope that everything will just fix itself on its own. Like everything, you have to work at it.
Hypocrisy, that's what this is. See, even she knows as soon as she's mentioning it that she's being a hypocrite because she's not fighting for this relationship. She's just sitting idly by watching Ashton fall in love with Isabella. How dare I preach about something when it's exactly what I've been doing? And then, I go and act as if I'm entitled to any of it. That, by virtue of us growing up together, he must return whatever I feel for him. That he's not allowed to look at another because I'm the one who's stayed by his side the longest. When in the first place, Ashton has always been his own person. This is something I cannot force on him. I can only hold to these. I can only hold on to these, take care of it until the time comes I can confess it to him. Great if he reciprocates it, but if he can't, if he won't, selfish. I've been too selfish. How laughable that Luke's words will strike up true until now.
But what do I know?
I'm sure the daughter of the two greatest professors I've ever known is smart enough to know what she's talking about.
No, she isn't. At one point, maybe, I would have easily agreed on that. However, the past weeks has also seen changes in the way I view things. As nice as the things sound, it turns out whatever I previously know may not be true for other people or for myself. It is sobering and almost funny how things I might have said with much certainty before now has doubts muddying each of them. There will be time to mull about these later because when a hush suddenly descends in the whole room, a whole different issue rears. Especially when fucking Luke, strides into the now quiet ballroom, fashionably late and oozing with the same pompous mien he's always carries around with him.
Good evening, ladies and gents. Enjoying the party? I hope I'm not too late in welcoming you all to the right mansion.
Before long, Hannah leaves my side to join him, and it doesn't take a genius to piece it all together.
Welcome one and all to our humble abode. Tonight, if you have yet to find yourself in your roles, you are all ladies and lords of the court of your king and queen. If you would excuse my presumptuousness. So, enjoy the feast that has been laid out for your senses as we only allowed the best to be served. Enjoy the rest of your night, everyone!
His attitude, the manner he carries himself around the people, his unfamiliarity with the part of the city, of fucking course. Should have known. Although I'm partly to fault here, tabloids and the gossip columns have never really been my thing. I should have also expected that whatever Luke fucking Wright is, some sort of drama will surely follow. He seems the kind of person who revels in it. Figures it'll find him on its own, even when he's not asking for it. It happened oh, I remember this scene. I remember this scene all too well. It happens amidst the round of applause and hoots that people lagging behind the crowd they've gathered does not catch on until the cheers turn into several scandalized gasps.
I am pregnant with your little bastard. You promised me you'll take responsibility. God damn it, Luke. I finally got you to talk to me after months of silence, and you do this to me.
Do we get his? This is lies and slander, woman.
What do you mean you're pregnant with? Luke, is this true?
Lies and slander, woman!
That's probably my favourite line that Luke has ever said. The most pompous line you could ever hear from someone. Lies and slander, woman!
Security! Johans, take her out of here before she makes an even bigger fool of herself!
No, you do not do this to me. I was so ready to leave my stupid oaf of a husband. I told you to leave that damn wife of yours. Look at her. Does she look like she wants a baby?
She's pregnant, though.
Does she look like she could take care of a baby?
She's pregnant, though. The commotion doesn't go further despite the drunk woman appearing like she has plenty more venom to spill. In a little while, security shows up, escorting her out. Apparently, she's the chief inspector's wife too. As if the whole thing can't get any more fucked up than it already is. What a mess. The damage has been done, and beyond the repercussions this will bring, I'm more worried about Hannah. Maybe Luke too, in part. I've seen the man that hides behind his self-importance, and it's someone who cares for the person who stands beside him. No matter how questionable that is now. After all, no anger is worse than that of a scorned woman. And Hannah, well, as refined and well-mannered as she is in front of her guests, I'm not sure she'll be all too willing to tolerate this. Her party, her home, her husband, and the woman who's just dared to walk all over it. Yet when I glance at her, there's only defeat, a weary slump on her shoulders, and a certain depth to her breathing. Like the fight has already been drained out of her long ago. This music's like way too intense for this scene. Like a Final Fantasy final boss music.